Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Tuesday, February 6th. This is day 123 since October 7th. Several people last night joined us on a call. It was late last night for us on the East Coast, started at 9 o'clock. It was an international call for a podcast hosted by Drew Hart and Jared McKenna called the Inverse Podcast. I'd encourage you to listen to that episode about Gaza ceasefire pilgrimages that'll be happening all over the world during the season of Lent. It's now confirmed to be 85 cities in 12 countries. It was a gift to be on the call with several of the organizers, including Susan Wahab, Jared McKenna, Lisa Sharon Harper. The pilgrimages are sponsored by organizations like Palestinian Christians in Australia, Atoria, Christians for Peace in Palestine, Freedom Road, Palestine-Israel Ecumenical Network, and the organization that I'm the executive director of, Churches for Middle East Peace. We birthed this global movement of solidarity, and together we'll be walking in pilgrimages during Lent all around the world. They based the idea off of a seed of faithfulness planted by James Harris from New Zealand. And I'd encourage you to visit the website, consider planning or joining us on a pilgrimage this Lent. I'm looking forward to the spiritual practice of walking, of being together, of joining with the body of Christ, with people of other faith traditions, embodying our faith and the hope of what we believe in God, of what we believe in about the humanity of people in Gaza, of the humanity of Palestinian people, of the humanity also of Israelis, and calling for peace between Israelis and Palestinians, an end to genocide and the prevention of further genocide, and calling for a ceasefire. It was nice to have time in solidarity with one another in our journey together of activism and spirituality. A little bit of news from today, devastating news, particularly for Israeli families. Israel just communicated this past day to families of 31 hostages that their relatives are dead, as there still is not an answer from Hamas in terms of the truce proposal, but the news has come as the Qatari Prime Minister communicated that Hamas has generally given a positive response to proposals for the deal in trading a pause in fighting in exchange for Palestinian prisoners for the return of more hostages. And in that, the Israeli government communicated that they are aware that 31 of the remaining hostages, of what was believed to be 136 hostages, are believed to be dead. The number of dead equates to more than a fifth of the remaining 136 hostages that are still held in Gaza, which is just horrific and tragic news. According to available intelligence that comes from the Israeli military and from the Netanyahu government, Qatar's one of their leaders, they're acting as the mediators between Hamas and Israel. They said that Hamas's response to the proposals drawn up by the US and Israel that was proposed more than 2 weeks ago inspires optimism, but they would not go into details. We know also that the US Secretary of State Blinken is speaking with the Qatari Prime Minister during his travels in the Middle East this week, and that he will be discussing Hamas's response with Israel also on Wednesday. In other world news, the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, was warmly welcomed by Israeli officials. He also announced that he has every intention of Argentina moving their embassy to Jerusalem. He is currently continuing his trip in Israel. And also Secretary of State of the United States arrived in Cairo and met with Egyptian President El-Sisi. It's a day after Blinken started his tour in the Middle East, after meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince. Blinken and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman discussed regional coordination to achieve an enduring end to the crisis in Gaza, according to a State Department readout. The U.S. military says also that it carried out more strikes in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen, hitting what it described as explosive uncrewed surface vehicles, or USVs, according to Reuters. Reuters says that those are explosive-laden drone boats. A UK ship traveling through the southern Red Sea has been attacked by a drone, but no one as of yet has claimed responsibility. 6 allied Kurdish fighters were killed late on Sunday by a drone attack on a base that was also housing U.S. troops in eastern Syria, in the first significant attack in Syria or Iraq since the U.S. launched strikes over the weekend against Iran-backed militias. The U.S.-backed Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces said on Monday that an attack hit a training ground at Al-Amar base in Syria's eastern province, Deir el-Zor, where forces commando units are trained. No casualties were reported among American troops, but Islamic resistance in Iraq claimed responsibility. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society reported on social media that Israeli forces have detained the general manager and administrative director of Al Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis. We've been talking a lot over past weeks and months about the hospitals in Gaza and the need for the protection of medical professionals as accordance with international law. Russia summoned their Israel ambassador to Moscow over comments that Ambassador Halpern made in an interview. She criticized Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, for playing down the importance of the Holocaust and said that Russia was being too friendly with Hamas. And then back here in Washington, D.C., the House is set to vote on the GOP's new standalone Israel aid bill. I believe that's set to be later today. Today is Tuesday. The standalone bill would provide billions of dollars of aid to Israel, complicating efforts in the Senate to rally support for bipartisan national security bill that the House GOP leaders oppose. The House Speaker Mike Johnson, a Louisiana Republican, announced the legislation that would send $17.6 billion to Israel. He announced that this last weekend on Saturday, one day before the unveiling of the Senate's broader security package. Johnson's bringing the bill to the floor using a maneuver that requires the support of 2/3 of the House to pass, a high bar given opposition from both the right and the left. The Senate package, which resulted from months of negotiations, would overhaul U.S. border policy and includes funding for Ukraine in its war against Russia, as well as military aid for Israel and humanitarian assistance for Palestinians. The bill came as a response to Republican demands for broader security funding in exchange for more Ukraine aid. So there's much for us to keep in mind in our thoughts, in our prayers, and our ongoing efforts calling for a ceasefire, an end to violence, the return of hostages, and a lasting peace. As we work towards an end to the decades-long occupation of Palestinians and to a lasting and just peace between Israelis and Palestinians.